get the job done. Okay, so the first person that approached us used a actual whiteboard as their calendar to kind of plan out everything. So they had a big, long whiteboard, and it basically had different color coding blocks for each project. And they would layer them on top of each other. All of these little rectangles are tasks. So we could say, you know, orange equals bathroom remodel. Purple's some type of kitchen remodel. And we can say blue. Oh, blue is like a house extension, or an ADU is what they call it. I still don't know what that stands for, but it basically means they're adding on something, addition unit or something. So it's some additional thing. Anyway, general contractor Dan the man, he only has 6 workers. This is his crew, just 6. Now, some of them are carpenters. Some of them are not electricians, like drywallers. Some of them are apprentices. Now, literally, the core job, or one of the core jobs for a general contractor, is to figure out what is the best use and allocation of these guys' workday into the schedule. That's his main job. So Dan the man was staring at his whiteboard calendar, and he'd be like, oh my gosh, Jeff just finished his drywalling task a day early. Shoot, I had it scheduled out for at least 3 days, but he finished it a day early. We have a hole in the schedule. That's a hole right there. That's a hole in the schedule. What am I going to do? Well, if I enjoyed doing my job, I would probably stare at my calendar and try to reshuffle the entire calendar to figure out what the best plan of action would be. More likely what's going to happen is we're just going to eat that. He's just going to basically say, well, I don't really know what a better task to sub into here is, so I guess we'll just have those 2 days not be scheduled for anything. Because remember, these schedules get really complex and really long. That's a no-no. That's a time waste. That's bad. That's really bad. Time waste bad. We don't want that. So, what are we going to do about it? You know what else is an issue? So let me introduce another piece of the puzzle. We're going to call them subcontractors. Ha ha ha. Subcontractors come in and do all of the work that these guys in the crew can't do. It's out of their skill. So, typically maybe there is an electrician subcontracting place. Maybe they are drywallers. Maybe they're just general labor. Subcontractors get called by the lead contractor. He gives them up a ring and says, hey, we need to put electrical in this house, and I don't trust Dave the apprentice because he's going to burn the whole place down, so we need you guys to do it. And they're like, ha ha, you always need me. So they're going to come in and they're going to try and fill in the schedule as well whenever Dan says so. An issue is these subcontractors are sleeping around. They're going to a bunch of other places, you know. They're basically mercenaries. They're going to go where the pay takes them. So a lot of times these subcontractors aren't able to show up exactly on time. Maybe the schedules aren't working very well together. So when Dan originally goes and creates an entire master schedule, but he doesn't factor in the exact dates that a subcontractor gives them, that's another way his entire schedule gets messed up. So let's say right here, threats to schedule. So what are the threats to the schedule so far? So first we have the holes in the schedule. So we have scheduling holes. Okay, next we have subcontractors subcontractor issues. Okay, what are some other issues we also have? Well, what happens when, let me introduce yet another variable for you, okay? And we're going to use orange for these guys. We'll do it right up here. All right, this man drives a big old looks like a fire truck, but it's not. This is a materials truck. Materials. Dan the man calls up the materials guys and he says, I need my drywall, I need my wood, I need everything at these specific dates. Let's say they agree to bring the wood at 1/29. What is that? January 29th. And then February 4th is when they want to bring cement, for this example. Okay, he needs to also factor that in when creating the schedule. And let's say originally when he called them up, they said, yeah, no, we can get you those materials on the 29th and we can get you that cement on the 4th. Well, what happens when the 4th rolls around? Say this is the 4th. What happens when the 4th rolls around and Mr. Material Man, he's really small, Mr. Material Man goes and tells Dan, hey, just kidding, you're not getting your materials. Sorry, and then hangs up, which happens a lot. Maybe not that bar for bar, but that happens a lot. Well, this guy just goes, Urgh. He's angry. He's like, shit. Well, here's another threat to my schedule. How do I deal with my materials now not showing up? Now I have to reshuffle my entire calendar over again because the cement delivering was dependent on my cement workers working their job. I now have to move my cement workers, I don't know, let's say it's like right here. Their 4th was here. He's scheduling in his cement workers to be here. He's like, shit, now I'm going to have to move them over here or something like that, which creates yet another hole and another shuffling. So let's say material delivery problems. Well, that's pretty much everything that could happen. No, I'm just kidding. Let's introduce yet another variable. This one's one you all know and love. Dun, dun, dun. I guess that should be orange. Weather. I mean, it's pretty similar to, let's say, hey, we're doing a back patio, like a cement pour, and it's just pissing rain, but you didn't know that when you scheduled the cement pour for right here, but the weather now is raining. I'm going to have to move my calendar again. Let's introduce yet another variable. So Dan the man is working for Seth, who does meth. And Seth, who does meth, he's a little sad because he hasn't found his meth yet. Seth, who does meth, is the one who he's working for. Let's say Seth, who does meth, is he wants his bathroom remodeled so he can shoot up. Seth is angry because the tiles that came aren't up to his specs. They're not warm enough for him to be laying on them. Well, Dan's like, oh my God, you didn't bring this up to me. What the hell? Now I'm gonna have to go and talk back to Material Man and go shift my schedule around again. So this would be client issues. Oh my goodness. So that's a lot of problems. If only there was some type of revolutionary technology that could look at some calendar and be monitoring it 24/7 and waiting for real dynamic problems and shuffle that calendar around in real time. Enter AI. So, this was the exact problem that me and my partner at Opulence have been trying to solve. I was approached by a general contractor who basically just went and outlined all of that for me. He showed me his schedule. He walked through all of the issues. And he basically said he wanted an AI system that could generate schedules, assign his crew to tasks within that schedule. He wanted to be able to talk to the system, so he wanted to talk to system, talk to system. He wanted to be able to talk to the system. And then he also wanted the system to be able to talk to his crewmates or talk to his crew and basically tell them where to be at what time. So also talk to crew. And enter the schedule master V.1. So that's what I've been working on, is solving all of these problems with AI. And I'm going to show you exactly how I've done it so far. Okay, and we're going to keep doing it on the whiteboard. Okay, so the first step is actually generating the schedule. So how do we do that? Well, we need information about the project itself. And how do you do that digitally? Well, you create a form. You create some type of form where you can input details about a project. I call this the project intake form. Okay, so this just has questions like name of the client, the project, location, square footage of the project, what are the tasks needed, what are some preferred crew members, and stuff like that. Okay, so after the project manager would have a client come to him and say, hey, I want this to be built, the construction manager would say, okay, you know what, I can do that for you. So he'd say, yes, we're going to build it. And he would go to this form, and he would be the one saying, Dan the man, which I think was red before, but now he's going to be orange. So Dan the man would go out and he'd fill out this form. Okay, he fills out this form. After that, the form goes to the first step in the system, which kind of has a shitty name. Okay, enter the first step in the system, which is the initial task generation. So, if you guys don't really know how agents work or how AI works, this is a type of It's a type of software tool that has a large language model as its brain that it uses to kind of reason about a query or question that is asked. And what makes them so revolutionary is you can attach stuff called tools. So let's say his tools are his arms, okay? We're gonna give him just a little body here, and his tools are gonna be the arms. So that's what he can do stuff with, okay, his arms. And he gets to choose what he wants to do with his arms based on what we tell him to do in his head, which is called a prompt. So his prompt is like the instructions that we have in his head that tells him what to do when certain circumstances come his way digitally. So in this case, this guy's only job was to look at incoming data of the project intake form. So he had to look at that incoming data, and then he had to first call let's make this a little arm. He first had to, okay, that's a little, I don't know if that made that any better. He called a database, or just say like a little document to represent a database. That was like 35 pages long on Google Docs that basically was summed up the best practices of how to create tasks for a project. So in this case, let's say this was a kitchen remodel project. This guy would go and look at his database and find the section that says, here are all the sequential tasks that are needed to complete a kitchen remodel. They all go in some type of order. You have your demolition, you got some type of rough-ins, you could be like carpentry, it could be electrical stuff, and then after that you can do your drywalling or your cabinet setting and all that stuff. I'm not a master general contractor, but it goes some way in that order. And it's repeatable, and it always goes through the same process. It's just the specifics about them change. So he goes and finds, okay, cool, this is how you do a kitchen remodel. So he adds that to the context in his head. And then he goes, okay, so I think I know that this is a kitchen remodel. So now I have the tasks that need to be done. Well, now I need to look at other things like what's the square footage, right? So we'll look at the square footage, and then he goes to a calculator tool, which this calculator tool is specifically for, we'll say this is a taskmaster data, and we'll say this one is another document that is on just basically square footage and what that means to how long it should take. So square footage equals number of hours. So that's another tool we have, okay? So first, this is the first thing he's supposed to do. This is the second thing he's supposed to do. And now he has enough context to finally output what we want him to output. And we let him use yet another tool, which is called a structured output parser. Funny name, all that means is you output data in the exact way that I want you to output data. So in this case, the way that we wanted him to output data was task name duration in hours and a task ID, as well as the project ID. Okay? So we wanted him to output data in this way, okay? Which is awesome. So now we have probably, let's say this, for this kitchen remodel, we go through this first initial task generation, and then we get a list of, let's say, 28 tasks that follow this type of form. So there's going to be 28 different types of task names with the duration of hours, their task ID, their project ID, and that's 28 times. So cool, this guy's job is done. So what comes next? Well, I'll tell you what comes next. Well, now that we have all of the tasks that need to be done for a project, we actually need to insert them into the master schedule. We need to basically now look at what I call resource scarcity, which is time, which is crew availability, and pretty much just those two. So we have another, this is black, we got another agent, but this is called, I called it task insertion. Task insertion. So this is, let's just say resource scarcity. And remember that resource scarcity is the actual available slots in the master calendar, as well as the crew availability. Okay, so we're going over here. Now we're going to do another little robot guy. It's a very long head, very big head. So this AI agent is going to take what's called an array of 28 different tasks, and he's going to run through one at a time each task and work on inserting it into the master schedule, okay? So basically this guy's instructions are look at task, look at master schedule, insert tasks in a way that makes sense. So let's go ahead and kind of define what tools we're giving this agent. So this guy first has access to the You see that? You see that? Do you see that? That's Airtable. Don't say I don't put in effort for you guys. Sorry, I'm not trying to be so intense. I'm new to this, okay? I'm new to this, so just bear with me. Okay. Airtable. What the hell is Airtable? Google Sheets on crack. Leave it at that. Google Sheets on crack, which means a lot more intense, can do a lot more because it thinks it can, and it has armor on pretty much, which is crack. But in this case, it's Airtable. Okay, Airtable is where I decided to store all of the project data about a master schedule, or about the project manager's schedule. So this guy has we'll call this the master schedule. So he has access to this Airtable, which has the master schedule in it, with all the current ongoing tasks and projects, okay? So this guy now has these tasks created, and these tasks went straight into his head. So that data went straight into his head. So remember, his first step was to look at these tasks, okay? Then his second step was to look at the master schedule to kind of get a good idea of what we got going on, to find the holes. The next thing that this mofo was supposed to do was, I'm just going to use the same little node. He was going to hit, God, that looks so bad. Looks so bad. We're just going to do that because it kept looking like something wrong. He's supposed to use a different master or a different Airtable tool to look at the crew data. So within Airtable, you know how Google Sheets, you can have different sheets within one tab pretty much? Airtable, it's called different tables within a base. So it's like base is the big boy, tables, you could have different tables in it. So one table is the master schedule. Another table is the crew data. So we'll also say crew data. So then he needs to go and he needs to look at the crew data, which has all the crew's names, their contact information, their skills, and what tasks are assigned to them at that moment. Okay, cool. So now he has context on the current master schedule. He has context on the current crew data and availability. So now what does he have to do? Well, now he needs to run through a logic of proposing we'll say proposing a crew assignment to that task. So let's say he had task 1, which is demolition day 1, and he wanted to assign Jeff, or Jeff was let's say he wanted to assign Bob the demo guy. So he wants to assign for demo, which we'll say demo, which is demolition, and he knows it'll take 8 hours, and he wants to assign Bob. Okay? And the task ID and the whatever are already there. The task ID and the project ID are also there. So this is what Mr. Task Insertion just proposed. All he did was assign a crew member and I almost forgot, a start date and an end date / time. So he proposes the worker that needs to be assigned to that task, worker or workers, the start date and time, and the end date and time. So cool. He's like, you know what? I think this is the best action. I think this is what would probably be best in this scenario. Well, I don't trust this guy. I don't trust him one bit because he's an AI agent and he's stupid. So in order to combat that, we're going to have other AI agents check him, which is called litmus testing. It's basically where we have a set amount of rules when it comes to scheduling, such as you cannot schedule people before 7:30 a.m. or after 4 p.m., or you can't schedule workers to be in more than 40 hours in 1 week, which is bad because they don't pay overtime. So the next thing that happens is we go through another agent, and this guy's job, he's the litmus test. So his job is to basically check he's going to check all of these tasks one by one, and he has access also to one. This is the rules. So this is basically like these are all the things you can and cannot do. So like I said before, not scheduling before 7:30 a.m. and not scheduling after 4 p.m., all that type of stuff. So those are his actual things that he's testing for. He also has access to the master schedule and Airtable. That's Airtable. He has access to the master schedule and Airtable because he needs to know how to, in order for him to check if a crew member's hours are adding up to more than 40 hours a week, he needs to be able to check the current tasks that they have going on. So he has access to that and the rules, and his job is to just check this task one by one, and he either outputs a green, good job, or he outputs bad. There's two things that can happen. So if he outputs green, that means the task passes and we can insert it. So that goes to the final agent in this workflow, and his job is to do the task insertion. So his key role is literally just to insert the cleared off tasks into the master schedule. Cool. You want to know what happens? So where could this possibly go then? So if he checked it off and the task is inserted, what happens after that then? Well, it loops back. It loops back right to the very start, okay? And I'll explain why it does that after I explain this part. So what happens if it says, no, that's bad, I don't like how you scheduled this task, it failed for some reason? It goes to the revisions agent. Okay, so this revisions agent is basically going to take some, he's going to take like a text to speech. He's going to go, yo, fix this. So he's going to tell him exactly what's wrong with the schedule, and he's basically going to output a fixed task. And he's basically going to run this task back through to the litmus test. So if you're watching, what's going to happen is this will run over and over and over again until this guy outputs a task that this guy checks off as good. It doesn't fail all of these things, okay? And finally, after it does pass all the tests, it's able to go into the task insertion, and then it starts over again. Because remember, we have 28 different tasks, and we're only running by one by one, because it's too much of an overload to try to insert all 28 at one time. So this whole system goes over and over and over again until all of these tasks are inserted. Awesome. That is that's the first step of the cycle, okay? Creating a schedule and putting it into the master schedule. So that was what I just outlined, was that first step. The second step gets a lot more complicated. Okay, so now we have to talk about all of the other things, okay? So all of the other problems. How do we actually deal with construction materials not showing up, or crew members basically saying, hey, I finished up a day early, or client having issues, or weather? So we need to have some type of assistant that can look at the schedule and be monitoring it and try to make those changes. So that's where we enter in the executive agent. Dun, dun, dun. So we have the executive agent. And I'll show you what this guy kind of looks like. I got dust on my... Ugh, gross. Okay. So the executive agent is the one who is basically has direct contact with the what was his name? Dan the Man. Okay, so we got Dan the Man over here being a screenager on his phone. We got Dan being a screenager on his phone, and he's texting this executive agent. So this is the executive agent, okay? So he has a lot of tools, okay? He has access to a different agent who is in charge of managing crew. So we call this guy the crew manager. Okay, he also has access to another AI agent as a tool to we'll say the task manager. And this is in charge of moving tasks, creating new tasks. So moving tasks, creating new tasks. This guy's in charge of crew assignment. Crew texting. Okay, he also has access to another executive agent as a workflow, which we call the conflict. So this guy has conflict resolution as his main one, and then conflict finding. Okay, if I'm remembering right, he also has access to another one. But this pretty much encompasses everything that he needs to do. Okay, to kind of understand what the hell is going on here, think about it like a normal corporate structure. You have your big guy CEO on top, and then he will get some type of thing that the business needs to do, some type of task. And all he does, he doesn't do it himself. That would take away his time from golfing. Like, why would he do that? Doesn't make sense. So instead, he routes it to a lowly intern or a lowly worker, okay? So that's exactly what is going on here, but we're, digital hierarchy. We're arbitrarily assigning this guy as a CEO, as the parent workflow, and instead of him having to carry out all of what Dan would ask, he just takes those, and then he's like, okay, well, if I want to move a task around because Dan asked me to, I should probably go and tell my crew manager, get on that, okay? And crew manager will get that and say, well, big boss upstairs told me to go and move this task around. I need to do that. So he does that, and then he'll route back up when that task is done, And then that agent will go back and tell Dan when it's done, and we'll update the schedule as well. So that goes literally the same with any type of query, is what we call it, or question that Dan can ask. Now he's happy. The executive agent will then go and delegate what needs to happen next. And all of these guys are monitoring the schedule. So that's kind of the, it looks a lot simpler here. It's a lot more complex when you're actually building it out, because you got to try to think of every single possible question that he could ask, and what does that mean to actually route it to which agent, and all that stuff, which I will explain in another video, because I actually had a pretty cool way of tackling that issue. So yeah, this is kind of the core product that we're building here at Opulence. We are trying to solve project managers' jobs. We're just trying to automate it. And it's hard. Anybody that just says like, AI is coming for your job. Yeah, it's going to take a while because I need to figure out how to do it. Like, you can't just like one shot a prompt and like build something like this. Like it takes bashing your head against a wall for a while. But anyway, I'm going to be continually posting videos like this. This is our main focus. If you are a construction manager or know somebody in construction, please reach out to me and my team at Opulence, because we are very hungry to just hear all of your problems and try to solve them. We're basically using our AI knowledge and expertise to solve the many problems that come with construction management. So